All right, in this episode, we're going to create a new customer here. And you can see in this is the app. And as in the last episode, the QBD full name is read-only. Now I'm displaying it here. You're not going to probably display it in your app, but it's just to emphasize here that this is not a usable, editable field. You're saving this just like you would a numeric ID to keep in sync. That makes sure your app is in sync with QuickBooks, or your invoices will fail. If this is a vendor, your bills will fail, things like that. So these, what are called list entities in QuickBooks Desktop and online, are vital for doing the transaction entities correctly. Okay, so let's just do, we got a John Doe, let's do a Jane Doe. Okay, so I'm going to create here. Now in my code, I have made a line now in the queue. So this queue looks like this. What I do here is, of course, again, we have the account ID. This is a multi-tenant. As an action, I'm calling this add or modify. Now, the reason is the next episode is going to be about editing and updating an entity. But these are very similar. And what you want to be doing on this is you want to only create this XML when the queue runs. Meaning you don't want to create the XML to create the customer on QuickBooks Desktop in the queue. You see, I have really nothing in my queue that holds XML. I do record the XML once it's created. I will be getting into that later. That's for your troubleshooting purposes. But as for sending over to QuickBooks Desktop to create the customer over there, that's what we're doing. We're creating John Doe in our system and sending it over to QuickBooks, our customer's QuickBooks Desktop. I'm not creating that XML until the queue actually runs. So you see we have that import customer still going to run here too in the next run. And what I do is the resource type is customer, so that's the customer it's the database table in my system, and its ID. Let's go over there actually. So the way you do things in Rails is this is a unique identifier ID, and let's go like that. And okay, so we're going to be pulling John Doe. When the queue runs, we're going to create that XML. And the reason you do that is just so you don't have to be shoving XML, old XML, in the queue. Remember, the queue runs every 2 minutes. The customer may actually decide to bump it up to every half day or something. They have control over that, this setting over here. They have control of this auto run setting. So, whoops, now we're doing an auto run. Okay, so it's actually, okay, it's going to go make, now it's running the import customer. And you can see this is why I don't do any progress meter. You can, is because you can tell, the user can tell there's progress happening. And you see we're done now. That's why I don't get into any kind of progress math, is because of that reason. You can see the activity happening. That's all that matters. But you're welcome to do it, of course. But anyway, they can change that auto run minute to every whatever, and you have this old XML building up in your queue. And another thing you want to do that is in my library is I always check these, if it's an add or modify. I always check the resource type and the resource ID and whether it's in there or not, or in the queue. because they could be doing lots of edits to John Doe. They could be edit the mobile, they edit the phone again, and then you're building up all these queue things if you're not checking for uniqueness. That's what I was going to say, okay. You need to check for uniqueness in the queue. Go back to the queue. Like if I see a resource ID of 50 in the queue already and it hasn't been processed, so it would be false here, I don't create another one. So we just keep it the way it is, and that's fine because we're cutting the XML at the very last minute. So we're going to get all those changes anyway. But you could really, your queue could start, if you don't do any kind of queue management like that, and are shoving XML in the queue, you're always going to be changing the queue, adding that XML back. There's a popular gem in Rails land that I'm pretty sure operates that way. I'm not totally sure that where you put XML in the queue. You don't want to do that. You want to be smarter and cut your XML at the very end, right when the queue is running. That way you're getting the latest stuff. The queue is not excessively large and all that. Okay, so let's go look what happened here and give us a snapshot. Okay, I'm going to need to look at this. Let's go that in full screen mode. Okay, so what was done here now is, so the queue ran again. Let's just go back and so the authenticate job ran. In the authenticate job, we check for that particular company's, if anything is in the queue for that particular company. So the queue is based on the account ID, right? This is a multi-tenant app. So the queue checks for if there's a processed false for this account, and that's what happened. So I'm running for account 1, and these two things were caught. That's just a recap here. Now it goes to send requests. The job is present. The first XML it cut was going to be this import customer. That got finished. It kind of looped back and forth again right around here because it's an iterator query, stayed here, stayed here, stayed here, finished, done, marked it true. Then the logic in send request here says, hey, there's another one. Now we got to here, and now we ran the add new customer. So now we need to create the XML for the to make this new customer on QuickBooks Desktop, and that looks like this. That's going to be customer add request. That's from your on-screen reference. You go to customer add. You go to XML ops. Let's go to QB. Every time I open that, I got to change it back. Though these are very similar. So this is how you construct that XML to add a customer in QuickBooks. This is going to be a lighter weight version of it because I'm not doing addresses or anything. And this is what it looks like. Very simple. Okay, in my gem, the 2QB XML, you want to look at that on some of the character encodings. I'm using ASCII and like regular entity encodings for special characters. Encourage you to take a look at that for those kinds of cases. So this is all it was. It was simple. So this made this request and sent it over to QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Desktop made it, or tried to make it, and then sends the response back over here to your SOAP server. And that was like this. So you remember this from the iterator query. It's the same thing. In this case, it's not the same thing because this node is different. This is customer add RS response, the RS, but this is the same, the customer return. So you get your information here, and you make a new customer on your system. So in this episode, now we're going to go to the very important topic of how do I edit an existing customer and send it over to QuickBooks where there's an existing customer over there, John Doe.